Welcome to the Put On Waivers Media Group, home of the Put On Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
And welcome everybody to another glorious episode of the Put On Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, along with Ryan Holmes, and we are podcasting off the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. Perfect. Loved it. 76 and be perfect as far as that goes. Ryan, how you doing? I know you had some adventures in the air. I'm playing trains and automobiles, I guess. Getting back over here. How you doing?
I'm glad to be back on the West Coast. I could only take the East Coast for so long. 10 days was good enough. Got all my Boston accents out over the weekend, got my chicken parm sandwiches, but it was good. It's good to be back out west.
Cool. Our TPOW podcast is my Twitter handle, and RHOLM22 is Ryan. Subscribe, like, dislike, 5 stars, all that good stuff. Send the podcast to your friend, all that stuff like that. This is officially the last month without football. Every month until March has football in it. I also want to thank a personal thanks to everybody who listens to the show, who sent DMs and everything like that for my birthday. I appreciate y'all, and I guess you guys read the profile. Happy birthday to me, I guess. Thank you very much for that. Let's see here. So we have a lot of we're doing these top 5s of positions of players who are our favorites, not in this order, especially when I get to my cornerbacks. Please don't text me and say, Dwayne, what you're talking about as far as who's your number one corner. It is my favorite corner. I have a personal story why it's my favorite corner. Okay, so that's why. So we'll start with linebackers first. I have a couple honorable mentions, if you will, on my list here. We have a bunch of, I know you got a bunch of guys. I mean, the linebacking core was not. I'll just say in the history of us watching Raider football, it has not been, not a lot of Brian Urlacher's on this list. Sam Mills on this list.
Unfortunately, we use Khalil Mack as an edge at defensive end. And I tried to take some notes. How many Pro Bowls do these guys make on the corners that we're going to do later? A lot. When I got to linebackers, I don't think there's a single Pro Bowler on this entire list. I did tease last week there was a guy that the Raiders drafted that was a linebacker in college that ended up playing defensive tackle. He is an honorable mention. We'll give a shout out to Roderick Coleman, 5th-round pick in 1999
was a linebacker?
At East Carolina, and they converted him to a defensive tackle.
Wow.
But the rest of this list is not very good. Just put it that
way. So I'll start off with my first honorable mention. I don't know if you have any of those, but my first was William Thomas. Used to be with the Eagles, came to the Raiders, was a solid contributor for that team. So William Thomas was one, and then Ron Fredrickson was my other honorable mention. Do you have any honorable mentions before you got to your top 5?
I'd just like to pour some out for Sam Williams, who was on an annual scholarship from Al Davis, who we just couldn't seem to get off the Raiders. And then Travion Smith out of Oklahoma, who I had high hopes for. He could really run kind of a college, just never materialized. But this list, like we said, when we get into it, it's going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly pretty quick.
I always go first. Why don't you go first with your number 5 on Ryan's list? These are guys who we saw play. So if you're going to call me about Filippiano, I never saw Filippiano play.
Yeah, this is basically for me. It's mid '80s to present day. I was born in 1978, so don't hit me up with Ted Hendricks. And those kind of guys. But number 5, the interesting thing about all the 5 linebackers I have, they're all drafted by the Raiders. So these are all guys that the Raiders have drafted and developed. I'm going to go with Thomas Howard, who was a 2nd-round pick in 2006. He was a coverage linebacker, played 5 years for the Raiders. There in the late 2006 to 2011 era, had 392 tackles, 7 interceptions, and 4 sacks. So he was kind of a guy that was a coverage linebacker for them. But, I liked watching Thomas Howard play before he left in free agency. I want to say he went to Cincinnati. I could be wrong. But he would show up at 5th on my list.
Yeah, he passed away too, right? So
I'm not sure about that. Maybe.
I think he might have passed away too. But I think talk about a guy who would be a star in today's NFL. Like Thomas Howard would be a star as far as covering running backs out of the backfield and covering tight ends. He has so much speed. It'd be amazing. I'm gonna his counterpart, and I own his jersey. Kirk Morrison is a guy who was number 5 on my list. Love Kirk Morrison. Just always, even till this day, still talks about his time with the Raiders. I think they had that year where they were just like top 5 defensively, but their offense was Andrew Walter at quarterback or something ridiculous like that. So they just could never get anything done as far as that goes. But my number 5 is Kirk Morrison.
Yeah, that was the bed and breakfast Tom Walsh offense, Art Shell Part 2 of 2006. I'm going to check in at number 4. Morrison will make an appearance on my list later, but number 4, I'm going to go Greg Beaker, 7th round pick, 1993. Played 9 years for the Raiders, was a middle linebacker. He made a lot of tackles down the field. He wasn't a guy that got in the backfield, but he was consistent. He knew where to go. He could read the offenses. He understood what was coming at him. And he was just a pillar. He was just there and made plays for a long time in a Raiders uniform. 918 tackles, 15 sacks. And what stands out to me is the game they had at Indianapolis where he kind of deciphered Peyton Manning's audibles. I think it was like early in the season, week 2 maybe. The Raiders went into Indianapolis and stole one out of there. And Greg Beaker was orchestrated that. But just a reliable veteran player the Raiders drafted and developed. And he played 9 years, which is the longest of any Raiders I'm going to talk about today.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a game that he played in Seattle where the ball was Raiders forced a fumble. The ball's going out of bounds. His momentum was taking him out of bounds. So he just tapped the ball gently to stay inbounds so the Raiders could recover it. And I thought that was like such a savvy. He's in the middle of like all these savvy plays. Like Greg Beaker was a really good player. And yeah, I mean, Thomas Howard unfortunately pass away in 2013 in a car accident. I remember Kirk Morrison talking about him passing away. So he did pass away. So rest in peace to him. Kirk. So my number 4 was Aaron Wallace. I just remember him, solid player. I mean, I just had fun watching him play. So he's a guy who I really appreciated, contributed for the Raiders. Like I said, this list is not your typical, this is not going to be the Steelers list of linebackers here. So we gotta get through what we gotta get through as far as that goes. Who's your number 3?
Yeah, a quick note on Aaron Wallace. He was more of an edge rusher, but they played a 3-4, so he was an outside backer for the Raiders there. I think he had 21 sacks in his career, so he had a couple of productive seasons there. Number 3, I'm going to go back to the 1999 draft. In the same round as Roderick Coleman, the Raiders took a linebacker out of Maryland named Eric Barton. Eric Barton comes in 3rd on my list.
He's good. That's a good
played
one.
5 years for the Raiders, 336 tackles, 9.5 sacks.
Was it the Jets after that, right? I think
he left as a free agent, went to the Jets. So he was a starter on those teams when Gruden was first around. He was a rookie in '99, so he was part of those defenses that won some AFC West divisions, and obviously they got to the Super Bowl in 2002. Not a guy that a lot of Raider fans are going to remember, but he was a solid player for 5 years.
Yeah, he definitely was. I forgot. I totally slipped my mind. When you said his name, I was like, I'm mad they didn't do Eric Barton. I liked him a lot. You spoke about Greg Beaker. Greg Beaker was my number 3. I just solid player all around. We go back and forth. He was just a smart player as far as that goes. We kind of already talked about him. Who's your number 2?
Number 2 is Kirk Morrison, who you kind of touched on, 3rd round pick, 2005 out of San Diego State. Again, 5 years with the Raiders, 636 tackles, 7 interceptions, 5 sacks. I do as well. I did own his jersey. I had a bad stretch there from about 2005 on. I think it was Randy Moss, Kirk Morrison, Michael Huff. It was like every year I just got one, and the guy was worse than the guy before him. Wow. I was just grasping at straws at that point. So I think after Michael Huff, I stopped buying jerseys until I got Josh Jacobs. So I took a long hiatus from Raider jerseys, and now it looks like the Josh Jacobs purchase after his rookie years. Hopefully he has a good year and he stays around, but we'll see.
Yeah. Number 2 was Thomas. My number 2 was Thomas Howard. So I just love the speed and ability that he has. To do some really. I just love having like the Raiders actually had two linebackers playing together who were really good players. So that was difficult to that was like nice to actually see, and because most of the linebackers are very forgettable as far as that goes. So, who's your next guy?
Yeah, I'm gonna go to number one on my list. I caught the tail end of this guy's career. I'm gonna go Matt Millen.
Okay.
9 years with the Raiders. It was a second round pick in 1980. We talked about a linebacker converting to a defensive tackle. He was the opposite. He went defensive tackle to linebacker. He had that Raider mentality in the middle of that defense in the early 80s and carried it on through the late 80s. And he just embodied what it meant to be a Raider at that time. And, like I said, I was born in 78. So I probably, I have Raider memories starting, probably 83, 84, 85-ish. So that was right in the middle of his career. There's just not a lot to pick at the top of this list. So I went with the old savvy vet.
Yeah. So it was the tail end of his career. It only spanned a couple of years with the Raiders, and he played for some Raider rivals because he played for the 49ers, and he played for the Broncos as well. I'm from Connecticut and he's from Connecticut, so I did go with Bill Romanowski. I just felt like that edge, like what Millen brought back in the day. I thought Romanowski kind of took that mantle. He did cost a Raider player his career, so I can't overlook that in a practice. But for the most part, I thought he played on those teams late in his career. He did a great job with the Raiders. Just a smart football player, and it was always in the middle. If there was a turnover or a big play, he was always in the middle of it. And that's kind of the style I kind of like to see from Bill Romanowski.
Oh, definitely. Bill Romanowski should have been an honorable mention or towards the bottom of this list. I think the career was just too short with the Raiders for me to put him on there.
But this list could have been real short too.
It could have been top two.
It could have been nobody from this list if you want to really go through it. Let's go to the cornerbacks now. I'm going to go with a couple honorable mentions here. I don't know if you have any, but we can go through my honorable mentions. I had Torrey James as one of my honorable mentions. I also have Nnamdi Asomugha as an honorable mention. I have Chris Johnson as an honorable mention. I like Chris Johnson as a player. I thought he was a good. He was always he's always a feisty man-to-man cover guy. I'll let you go first. Are there any honorable mentions, and then you go to your fifth ranked cornerback.
Yeah, I got one honorable mention. I got Albert Lewis. I was a big fan of Albert Lewis when he played in Kansas City. Came over to the Raiders. It was a short career with the Raiders, but his ability to block punts on special teams. He could fill in as a nickel. He could play outside. Just a versatile player that I enjoyed watching late in his career. I would say James Trapp as well. He came off the bench in street clothes to fight the Broncos. Yes. I was at that game at the LA Coliseum. So James Trapp getting in there late in that season. I'll start at number 5. This guy's kind of overlooked in my opinion. I loved watching this guy play too. Lionel Washington played 9 years with the Raiders. Had 19 interceptions, 3 touchdowns. I didn't realize he played that long with the Raiders. I do remember him playing with the Raiders. He was a favorite of mine. When I looked at it today, I was like, man, he played 9 years with the Raiders, which is a lot longer than I thought. But I just loved watching Lionel Washington play.
Well, your number 5 is my number 5. And for those who don't know, we don't discuss our 5. So I always like Lionel Washington. I thought he was just a solid player. And then yes, I forgot. I didn't realize he played that many years with the Raiders too. So kind of had came with Denver a little bit and then came back as far as that goes. But I do like Lionel Washington, solid player. Love to watch. Love the way he played. I love the way he played. Who's your number 4?
Number 4, I'm going to go back to another defender that was on those Gruden teams that won a lot of games for the Raiders. Eric Allen would be my number 4. Played 4 seasons opposite Charles Woodson there with the Raiders, 15 interceptions. Prior to coming to the Raiders, he was a 6-time Pro Bowler with the Eagles and Saints. But just having that veteran across from Woodson, the rookie, that was when Woodson first got in the league, it was huge because as teams figured out how good Charles Woodson was, they couldn't really pick on the guy on the other side because he was a Pro Bowl level player as well. So it really helped when the Raiders had 2 elite corners out there.
My 4 was Albert Lewis, but to go to Eric Allen one more time, he is really, I felt like he was the guy. What I liked about Eric Allen was, number one, he was a shorter corner, but it didn't matter because he played bigger than his size. And he was the guy who so many times you see defensive backs, and listen, I get it. It's very difficult. There's a lot of stuff going on as a defensive back. It's hard to catch a football that's not intended for you. But Eric Allen did a great job of that. Like he would have some back. He had some interceptions that were just back breaking for the other team, and then helped his defense get off the field. So yeah, I definitely give you kudos to Eric Allen as far as that goes. I love Eric Allen, but Albert Lewis is a guy who I love watching. It was kind of hate watch when you see somebody who's great on the Chiefs, and you don't want them to be great against you. But I thought he had a pretty good career with the Raiders as far as that goes.
Oh, definitely. Number 3, I'm going to go back to Nnamdi Asomugha. I know you gave an honorable mention to him, but Raiders first round pick in 2003 from Cal Berkeley. Not the huge gaudy interception numbers, but he played on some teams that couldn't muster any offense, so teams didn't throw at him. But that long corner, the press corner, was a 3-time Pro Bowler with the Raiders, made 2 first-team All-Pros, 11 interceptions, took 1 to the house for a touchdown, but he kind of embodied, that long tradition of what the Raiders had outside from Lester Hayes, the Mike Haynes, the Charles Woodson. They always had that long press corner. And Asomugha, when the Raiders took him, there was a lot of questions about him, but he turned out to be a very good player before he left to go to Philadelphia.
And I believe at Cal, he played safety.
He was a safety, yeah.
He was a safety, and Al Davis said, "You're going to play press man." I remember him getting interviewed by NFL Network. He said, Mr. Davis said, "I'm gonna play press man," so I guess I'm just playing press man. So so good for him as far as that goes. That was your number 3, correct?
That was my 3rd, yes.
Your 3rd, yeah. So 3rd, I'm gonna go with Eric Allen. Eric Allen's one of my favorite Raiders of all time. Just kind of wish he played his whole career with the Raiders, but I'll definitely appreciate the time he had with the Raiders as far as that goes. But Eric Allen is my number 3. So we kind of waxed poetic about Eric Allen already.
I think we're going to have the same top 2, it sounds like, because the top 2 kind of stand out here.
I think we're going to have – I think we're good. I want to see what your number 2 is. I think I know who it is.
Yeah, number 2, I went Terry McDaniel. First-round pick in 1988. He was picked 3 picks after the Raiders took Tim Brown. Kind of overlooked. 5-time Pro Bowler with the Raiders.
How come we can't draft like that anymore? You think Tim Brown and Terry McDaniel?
Those are 2, 2 that they hit on. 34 interceptions, 5 touchdowns, 5 Pro Bowls. Mm-hmm. I bet a lot of people couldn't have guessed that he had that kind of success in those numbers. I was at my very first Raider game I ever went to. This is sad. They played the Seahawks. It was Rick Meyer's first year, so maybe it was the second start at the LA Coliseum. Raiders are down like 38-0. They're getting smoked by the Seahawks. I move all the way down to the first row next to the cheerleaders, and Terry McDaniel picks one off and goes to the house late in that game. But that was the very first Raider game I went to, and I just love the way Terry McDaniel played, and he played a long time for the Raiders as well.
Somebody's playing with us. I'm an unlucky sound in the background, but my number 2 Raider cornerback, my favorite Raider cornerback, is Charles Woodson. Charles Woodson is, just embodies everything that a Raider is. Kind of gave us that a little bit. I wish he would have played one more year, only to play on that 2016 team, because I think that would have been amazing if he could play on that team. Because that team with the way they kind of came together, had so many comeback victories, everything like that, they were just tremendous. And I do love. I mean, there's nothing not to love about him. I think in college you can fall in love with a player. And there's few times where you fall in love with a college player and then your team drafts that player. So that's why it was like, he was returning kicks. Everybody remembers that the pictures of him with the rose in his mouth. He was such a great player in that way. If there's a football player who kind of reminded me of Kobe Bryant, it was Charles Woodson. Like he really just reminded. That's why one of my profiles is a picture of Kobe and Charles Woodson. I just like the way their demeanor, the way they talk about the sport, the way they just took care of business, played hurt, all those things like that. I just love. I mean, Charles Woodson is one of my all-time favorites, and I don't know how he couldn't be one of your all-time favorites as a Raider fan. I wish he could have did what he did in Green Bay and won a Super Bowl with the Raiders.
Yeah, Charles Woodson comes at number 1 for me. Defensive Rookie of the Year, 5-time Pro Bowler with the Raiders, made a first-team All-Pro, 27 interceptions, 8.5 sacks, 18 forced fumbles. Thank God the Arizona Cardinals took Andre Wadsworth at 3. Because you're right, I fell in love with Charles Woodson. You know, him fighting David Boston against Ohio State, returning the punts, winning the Heisman, playing wide receiver, and then being a shutdown corner, which the Raiders desperately needed at that time. And just to see the career that he had with them, unfortunately, you know, he left. You know, Al Davis couldn't get the contract done, and he went to Green Bay. And then he came back. I was at the game on Christmas Eve against the Chargers that the Raiders won in overtime. When he threw up the O and had the speech on the sideline. I believe that was his last game in Oakland. And it's a memory I'll never forget.
That's crazy. So for me, my favorite Raider, I'll say one of my favorite Raiders of all time is Terry McDaniel. And I will never forget a game where the Raiders were playing at home and he got beat for a touchdown. And I'm watching, I'm in Connecticut, but I happen to be at this bar and I'm watching a game. I don't know where it was. It could have been a bar, it was somewhere. I'm watching the game and I'm surrounded by Vikings fans and they're going nuts. And like I am, and when your favorite player gets burned, you're like, oh my God. Could have been like the next drive. Maybe they tried the same play, pick 6. Like he was that kind of, he had some sticky fingers, man. Like he was like, you talked about his statistics, like Terry McDaniel is sneaky great Raider corner. Like people don't really talk about that guy that much, but he was really a great player. He physically, he's like facially with that beard, he looked like my dad's. So like that kind of like that kind of thing going too as well. But yeah, he's one of my favorite players with the Raiders ever. I just think kind of this quiet and assuming, but just did everything right and was just great. He was just fantastic as a corner. He was great.
If I remember off the top of my head, and I could be wrong, I want to say that there was a time when Daniel, Washington, and Lewis were all on the same team. That's a pretty good secondary. And then you throw in, I want to say Eddie Anderson and maybe like Derek Hoskins or whoever the safety was. But we'll get to our safety list soon, but Eddie Anderson might show up on that list. Maybe Derek Gibson.
Maybe Anthony Dorsett.
He will not be on my list.
Reggie Nelson will not make an appearance on that list either. No. I'm sorry, Paul Gunther. As far as that goes. So cool. I'm gonna open up now. I'm gonna talk about some other Raider stuff here. So one thing I gotta say is, and I'm not gonna give a Chiefs fans a warning, but I went into some NFL spaces this week, and a lot of Chiefs fans were like pretty much downplaying the impact that Tyreek Hill has on this. Basically, almost like Tyreek is not that good. And like, I just gotta tell y'all, man, like, yo, I know y'all trying to bring up, you're trying to push up MVS, you're trying to push up Juju, and I get it, Sky Moore, people like that. I understand what it's like when you lose a star. When we lost Khalil for 5 minutes, I was like, forget him. But like, I'm not about halfway through the season, I realized how good I know how good he is. Like, I'm just mad that he's not on the team anymore. I understand you're frustrated that he's not on the team anymore. They couldn't come to terms on the deal, and that's why he left. But you're asking MVS, who statistically is one of the worst, like as far as down the field guys in the league, even though he has speed. Juju is not. He didn't do anything ever since AB left, and I felt like my argument was, if MVS was somewhat special, if McCole Hartman was somewhat special, why couldn't they make an impact when they have monsters like, Devontae Adams, like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce to draw attention of a defense? And they still, when you watch them on film, they still cannot win.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, it's to replace a player of Tyreek Hill's ability. I mean, he's a Pro Bowl receiver. And what he does and what the traits that he brings, as far as the defense has to know where he's lined up at all times. And they like to put him in the slot, and you're taking that backside safety when he's running those over routes out of the play. Like, he's literally locked on Tyreek Hill, and it's opening up everything else. Now the defense can line up and they go, where's 87? Where's Kelce? Okay, there's Kelce. They're not afraid of anyone else in that offense. And Juju Smith-Schuster, fight-on Trojan, he's not going to win any foot races down the field. He's an underneath physical slot guy that's going to run crossing routes. Valdez Scantling, He might get over the top every once in a while, but he doesn't scare anybody. So defenses are going to play the Chiefs completely different than they've ever played them before. Now that Tyreek Hill's not there, and I get it, like you mentioned when Khalil Mack was gone, and whenever the Raiders have lost that star player on the field, either offensive or defensively, you think that you can make up for it by scheming up or putting another guy in there. You can't do it. When a Major League Baseball team loses the cleanup hitter, the all-star out of the order, that you pitch it totally different as an opposition until the Chiefs can develop some of these younger guys. And I'm looking at Sky Moore as a rookie, possibly Valdez-Scantling if they can get him in the right matchups. But they're not going to scare anyone with the speed down the field anymore. Mecole Hardman scares nobody. So I wouldn't even be worried about that. So they'll see. When the Chiefs come out and they're throwing the ball underneath, they can't get the ball down the field. They're going to have to run the ball. When teams no longer have to keep those safeties deep and the Chiefs want to run the ball and you can bring the safety down in the box, you're not scared of getting beat over the top. So it's going to be interesting to me. I think they open up with like 8 teams in a row that made the playoffs or something. They have a really hard schedule.
It's murderous.
How teams are going to play them and the adjustments that Andy Reid's going to make, because the Chiefs fans that think that it's going to be a track meet and they're going to score 30, 40 points a game, not going to happen.
Yeah, there were times in the playoffs where they were getting slowed down with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. So now, there's times I'm telling you, there's times where like there's games where you sent like because you help me out with film sometimes, you send me some film and I'm like, literally there was 3 dudes going where number 10 was. Like 3, he's taking 3. There's places where he's taking 3 guys with him, and you don't have that guy anymore. And I think I want to see how Kelce's production is going to be. Like that's going to be huge. Like if I'm them, I'm like I'm doubling Kelce and I'm playing man on everybody else, and I want to see Mecole Hardman and MBS beat me. Like it's just I'm not. They're a good team. They will usually Andy Reid and Holmes find ways. I just feel like they could have either, if they didn't want to sign Tyreek Hill, I think they could have maybe trying to get just some better options at wide receiver, because the tight end, he's not getting any younger either. But he's still a great player, but we'll see what happens with the Chiefs going on as far as that goes. Mary from 718, our feelings about Foster Moreau. So I would say this. The play that kind of sums up Foster Moreau to me was, do you remember the first drive of the game against the Chargers?
Yeah.
A great call. A great call. It was third and long. Great call. Kind of a delay, block it and then go out for a pass. And he showed you the potential. He showed you the burst. He showed you the speed. He was running by some corners and some corners and safeties on the Chiefs, but he didn't finish. Like, you can't be that weak with the football in that situation. You're about to score. You got to put 2 hands on it and just score the touchdown there. He's lucky that ball in a close game. It ended up being a really close game. That ball goes out of bounds and it's a touchback. That's devastating. The Raiders ended up getting 3 points out of that, but that's horrible that kind of took place. He'll always give you flashes. I think he gave you flashes early on in his career. I'm not sure if he's a special talent at tight end. And the blocking, as we saw last year, is not like something that you're going to write home about.
Yeah, so when I look at Foster Moreau, he's going to be another year off the injury, which is going to help. But I don't think he's a difference maker for a team. I think he can be a competent number 2. I don't think he's ever going to be a lead tight end, a guy that's going to go out there and get you 60 or 70 catches and win routes. But he can have a role in this offense. He's going to have to clean up the blocking. I think the blocking, the biggest disappointment I had was his blocking regress last year on film. I thought he was a much better blocker earlier in his career. Maybe it was the knee and injury, but he'll have a role in this team as a blocker, and then how they'll use him in the red zone. But he's not going to be a bulk catch guy. He's going to get 20, 30 catches. You're hoping to get 5 touchdowns out of him down in the red zone. Win some of those short intermediate routes, and then you're hoping he can hold up as a blocker. The Raiders clearly have other tight ends they have plans for. They brought in Hollister. They still have Nick Bowers, who's a better blocker, depending on how Josh McDaniels thinks about him. And I don't think they're done. If they decide that there's another tight end out there they want, they'll bring him in. He's going to have to prove it this year because he's in a contract year. So how he handles himself this year and what he puts on tape is going to determine whether he's going to be a Raider as we move forward.
thoughts about you, because this channel is Raiders football and USC as well. Thoughts about them going to the Big Ten?
Yeah,
What do
this
you want?
broke. When
Cut
I
the
was back
check.
east, I got it on my. It's all about the money. It's $100 million that they're going to get annually from the TV contract. Larry Scott in the Pac-12 completely fumbled the ball over the last 10, 15 years, however long it was. The Pac-12 network was a disaster. They just didn't market the conference and bring in the money. And at the end of the day, this is about money for the athletic program. It's about facilities. It's about upgrades. It's about nationally putting your name on the map. And this will help them as far as can they get into some national championship games here? They'll be in the second best football conference now, whereas the Pac-12 was fading pretty quickly. The question is going to be, how are they going to align it? Are they going to do an East and West? Are they going to get Michigan and Ohio State, or are they going to be on a side with maybe Wisconsin, Iowa, those kind of teams, Nebraska? How often are they going to have to go to Penn State, Maryland, and make those cross-country trips? I don't think it's going to be very often.
Yeah.
The thing that people forget about these big Uber conferences when you have 16 teams, you're barely going to play half the teams in the league. In the SEC, Georgia goes on the road to play Texas A&M like once every 8 years or something. It's ridiculous. So to sit here and think, well, they're going to hate it in Penn State in the cold, they're going to hate going to Maryland, they might have to do that once every 8 years. I don't think it's a problem. The question is going to be, can USC bulk up the offensive and defensive lines enough to go on the road and play a game in November and hold up against Ohio State or Michigan or Wisconsin, teams that want to pound the rock, when the passing game won't be at an elite level, then we hope it will be. But at the same time, those teams are going to have to come out and play Weston. They're going to have to play in the Coliseum on a sunny day where they're going to be running up and down the field, that they're not used to facing those kind of offenses either. So it'll be a good challenge. USC has a winning record against every team in the Big Ten. I know Twitter's going crazy saying that they won't handle it. They can't stand up. But I'm actually excited about it because I think this puts them in a better position to play in more championship games.
Yeah, I mean, recruiting is going to be like the USC could sit in US in Southern California and just recruit from there and have a national championship caliber roster. But now, if there's a kid, hey, there's a kid, we're playing Penn State. We're playing Penn State, like a kid from Western Pennsylvania, which is a football hotbed. You got Ohio is a football hotbed. You have an opportunity to kind of beef up those defensive and offensive lines, which is what everybody's worried about. You can do that with this move. And I think also the Pac-12 just got complacent. You gotta look around you and not be complacent. Like all these other teams, look at all this movement and they just kind of said they didn't do anything. And, which makes no sense. And also, I mean, if you're the Pac-12 and you're USC, like this isn't the NFL, where like it makes sense to share with everybody. Why am I sharing dough with Oregon State? Like they don't bring anything to the table. Like why am I sharing dough with Cal? They don't bring anything to the table. Like it's just too much. And it just makes all the sense in the world for them to move on. I mean, it just makes I just can't. I mean, it's kind of weird to me to see it. We'll see how it breaks up, and we'll see if they add. I think as far as I know, the Big 12 is talking to Arizona State, Arizona, in Oregon, all the other teams to try to get. So it might not be a Pac-12 anymore in a couple of years. So it all makes all the sense in the world for them to do that. I think the only other team that would come to the Big Ten would be Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame hang out there by themselves, trying to play high city. I mean, it's just time. I mean, it makes all the sense in the world for you to come to the party out here in the Pac-10. Next one would be. Go ahead.
I would add that I don't think they're done at 16. I think they go to 20.
Okay.
The two teams you have not heard mentioned, and there's a reason for it, Cal and Stanford, because they're tier 1 research institutions. I think they will ultimately be in the Big Ten. I think Washington potentially will go to the Big Ten, and then Notre Dame. I think those are the next 4. And then when you start really thinking about it, now you're going to have USC, UCLA, Cal, Stanford, Washington out west. And then you add like Nebraska and a couple of other Midwest teams and do 2 divisions of 10, or possibly
Iowa.
even split the 3 divisions.
Like Iowa.
But I don't think they're done with just you can't just have those 2 teams on the West and everyone in the Midwest. I fully expect Cal and Stanford will end up in the Big Ten as well.
Yeah, well, that is true. They've been really quiet on that. That's sneaky. That's sneaky. And then and Stanford does play a brand of football where they can play anywhere. As far as having a big offensive line, big defensive line. So we know that. Warren Sapp. Did you hear what he said about Kaepernick as far as that goes?
I did, about the workout being a disaster,
Yeah.
essentially.
So number one, like I don't like. I think the thing that I don't know about it, why is it important for him? I think for me, it's more when I look at it, is like Warren Sapp is trying to find a space. I think that RG3, he threatened to drop this book, and now RG3 is like everywhere. Like RG3 is on ESPN. He's getting interviewed by Rich Eisen. He's everywhere. I think he's trying to find a space. I'm not sure where that is. I'm not sure. I don't know if Josh McDaniels is boys with him. I'm not sure if he knows somebody who whatever. It doesn't really matter. Like I don't know why it's over for Kaepernick. He's not going to play in the league. He's been out of the league for 6 years. I think he wants to. He had an opinion about it, but he also wants to talk about the Gruden stuff as well too. So to me, it wasn't really that big of a deal for him to. I don't know why he had to comment on it, but I think he's just trying to find a media space in this quote unquote Draymond Green new media.
Yeah, I don't know why Warren Sapp even needs to comment on it. Warren Sapp stole a bunch of money when he played for the Raiders. I don't really consider him a Raider at the end of the day. And who gives him information? Marcel Reese? Like who's giving him that info? And then at the end of the day, what does it even matter? It's a non-story in my opinion. Yeah. And there's no way to corroborate that story that it was awful. We'll never know. Like unless Josh McDaniels or Dave Ziegler comes out and tell us, it's just hearsay. So he's probably like, hey, I can make a story out of this. I'll just go in there and say it's terrible. How do we even know that he has a source for this? And to me, at the end of the day, if the Raiders are going to sign him, they would have already done it. No other teams brought him in. It's a non-story, and Warren Sapp's just trying to get his name out there in the headlines.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's not gonna work. It'll work for a couple of days, and then the YouTube algorithm will take it away. As far as that goes, Brett Favre on Devontae Adams. Talking about his numbers are going to go down. I think his numbers are going to go down not necessarily just because he's going to play with the Raiders. I think it's going to go down because, unlike the Packers, the Raiders actually have other weapons. Like they don't have. I mean, it was just him and Lazard was the other receiver. I mean, Lazard couldn't hold. Hunter Renfrow's jockstrap. I mean, you have Hunter Renfrow. You have they like to throw the ball out of the backfield as well. And you have Darren Waller. So the numbers are naturally going to go down. But if the Raiders win a playoff game or get to the AFC Championship game, they did just as good as Aaron Rodgers has done the last 3 years.
Yeah, the numbers don't matter. At the end of the day, wins matter. And he's going to be in an offense where you have 2 other high-volume receivers with Waller and Renfrow. The scheme is going to dictate a lot of weeks that they might run the ball more than they pass it. And Derek Carr is going to spread the ball around. He's not going to force it to Devontae a ton like Rodgers did. Rodgers didn't have anyone else to throw to. I mean, Robert Tonyan, like you said, Allen Lazard, Valdez Scantling. They could turn around and hand it to Aaron Jones or throw it to Jones out of the backfield, but there's a lot more options with the Raiders than there were with the Packers to spread the ball around. And Derek Carr's always been a guy that's going to read the defense and throw the ball to the proper read more than force the ball to anyone in particular. So as long as the Raiders win, it doesn't matter if his numbers go down.
Yeah, it really doesn't. And he's looking to play in big playoff games, and and actually win some playoff games. So I think that's what he's trying to do as well. Let's see here. We'll save the Trayvon Moore for when we get a chance to look at PG's defense. Who scares you on this roster in a big game or in a big moment?
Who scares me?
Yeah.
Whoever lines up at right tackle, that's going to scare me, especially in the AFC West when they have to face those edge rushers. And then also on the other side, who is the true shutdown corner? I don't think they have one. I think with Yasin and Mullen and Everett, you're going to have guys that are a number 2 or number 3 corner. They don't have that true shutdown guy that's going to take away the other team's number 1.
Who's that's a good point. Who are like the guys who's available right now for like a veteran corner right now? Because it just seems like I am a little bit worried about it. I'm trying to trust the situation. I mean, but Everett, Rock Ya-Sin, and Trayvon Mullen, who's coming off an injury. I mean, that kind of worries me just a little bit. I'm trying to see who's a free agent.
Yeah, I'll bring up a list here.
Yeah, see what's going on here. Because that's going to be interesting to see what's going on. They could have spent. They could have
not
spent
a lot of
money
names here, like Joe Hayden, Kevin King, Xavier Rhodes. Jimmy Smith is getting up there. There's not anyone that's going to come in and just be an alpha dog shutdown corner. These guys are more number 2, number 3, which is what they have. If they were going to go the veteran route, maybe Joe Hayden. If they don't like what they see out of Mullen, if the injury is dragging on, I'd rather play Mullen than go out and spend money on Hayden, but it's all going to depend on the injury. But those two positions still scare me. Who's the number 1 corner and who's going to play right tackle and block Mack and Bosa and Chris Jones and Frank Clark and Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory. There's some elite edge rushers screaming off the corners.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at some Trey Waynes. And Trey Waynes is a name. AJ Boye, Travis Carey. Good old TJ Carey. He coming back. Bernard Hargraves, people like that. So we'll see. We'll see what goes on as far as that goes. I think if they're healthy, this is going to be what they have. So we'll see what happens as far as that goes. We did have a one question about fantasy football and just like who would be some Raiders who you would think about. I mean, obviously, it's all about where the red zone touches get distributed, and it's going to be hard to say where that's going to go as far as that goes. So I think like you said, if they're doubling up on 17, I mean, he's going to throw to 13 and throw to 83 as far as where touchdowns go. I would say because they had so many rushing touchdowns last year. Maybe that would be something where like Josh Jacobs could possibly be a guy who you might go to as far as fantasy football as a second tier running back, but I don't see a first tier running back on this team.
Now, I think the first guy to circle is Waller because I think the attention the first couple of weeks isn't going to go straight to Adams. I think Waller's going to have a lot of matchups. I trust McDaniels to get him lined up against safeties and linebackers where teams can't just put their a big corner on him. So I think. And then in the red zone, I think this is the year Waller finally emerges in the red zone as a true guy that's going to get a lot of targets and he's going to break 10 touchdowns. Obviously, Devontae Adams, I mean, he's going to get his volume catches. He's going to get his touchdowns. I would stay away from the running backs because I don't know how Josh McDaniels is going to play this. If you can get Josh Jacobs in like the 10th round, that's fine. I would not take any of those running backs in the top 5 or 6 rounds in a fantasy draft. And then Renfro, depending on where you can get him. So I think I would feel safe with any of those 3 weapons on the outside. And then potentially Carr, depending on where you could get him, if it's a 10-team league, 12-team league.
2 quarterbacks.
Because I think he's gonna put up some numbers this year. I don't think the yards are going to be where people want it to be. I don't think he's going to go out there and sling it for 5,000 yards. I think this is going to be a much more balanced offense. But I think the touchdowns are going to go up.
Yeah, it should as far as that goes. So that was the last one we have for today. Any parting things for the Raiders here as we close up shop here?
I'm just looking at it now. We're less than a month away from the first game, August 4th, Hall of Fame game kicking off against the Jaguars. We're going to see a lot of guys that won't be on the team later, but it's just going to be good to see the silver and black run out of the tunnel and play an actual football game. We'll get to see McDaniels on the sideline. You get to see Devontae Adams warm up in that 17 Raiders jersey, but it's a downtime. There's not a lot going on now, and just get prepared for this upcoming season and get hyped. I'm getting excited for that home opener. I actually was looking at flights the other day. Southwest is kind of screwing me right now. I have a flight credit from the pandemic that I didn't realize you had to book it and complete it by September 7th. And I went online to buy the flight and I'm like, well, no, I can buy it now. Like, why do I have to complete the flight by September 7th? But I guess you have to. So I couldn't buy the flight to Vegas. So maybe I'll drive. I have the preseason game tickets. I may just pop in there for the Patriots preseason game just because I have to use the flight credit. I don't know yet. But the only reason I would go to a preseason game is because Southwest is holding that ticket on me.
How long is the flight? 45 minutes?
Yeah, it's like 45 minutes.
45 minutes, yeah. A couple news around the league. Sounds like Demaryius Thomas had stage 2 CTE, which is like, which is like sad for his death and everything like that. RG3 says, RG3 again, he's set to return in 2022. I'm ready to play if anybody needs me. So this is funny. He's everywhere. Mike Greer, his brother Chris Greer, is now the first African American GM in the National Hockey League, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool thing there as far as that goes. Nothing on Watson, huh? They got through the whole weekend without Watson. They're really kind of thinking this one out on how they want to handle this Watson situation.
Yeah, I would have thought we would have heard something over 4th of July weekend. Nice opportunity to dump that in the news when no one's paying attention. Yeah. The NFL clearly didn't do that. Now you're seeing, reports of, hey, the Browns may want Baker Mayfield to play this year, and he's kind of like, screw that, I've moved on. Sorry, Browns, I don't want to play for you anymore. So, and now you're seeing Browns fans are like, they're on the Jacoby Brissett bandwagon. I actually saw someone on Twitter that was basically predicted Brissett's going to throw 50 touchdowns, and I'm like, oh, come on, man, it's out of control.
Yeah, I've been hearing that from a lot of Browns fans as well. I did hear one thing. But only when I was on Twitter Space the other day. That's the last thing I'll leave us. We'll talk about real quick. Is you think people are really sleeping on the Bengals? Like nobody's talking about the Bengals at all, which is like kind of like made the Super Bowl. The biggest issue was the offensive line, and they just did nothing in this offseason but get quality offensive line and improve their offensive line, right? So I mean, the Bengals should be. I've been hearing a lot of talks about the Ravens, talking about the Steelers, but when we pick the divisions, I'm definitely going to roll with the Bengals.
Yeah, I think teams are overlooking them. I also think what happens with Jesse Bates will decide how I'm looking. I know he doesn't want to sign that franchise contract tender. He wants a long-term deal. The Bengals aren't budging. My biggest thing is, can that defense repeat what they did down the stretch and in the playoffs? I don't know that I'm fully convinced that defense is going to be elite again. But they still have Trey Hendrickson. Obviously, Jesse Bates is an elite free safety. I still don't trust the corners on the outside, but they did fix the offensive line. They do have elite weapons on offense. They do have Mixon. They do have Chase. They do have Higgins. They do have Boyd. And obviously Joe Burrow another year. So we'll see. They're going to be the Hunt did this year. So we'll see how the Cincinnati Bengals handle that. Yeah, it's a big task to repeat. Normally what happens when you lose the Super Bowls, these teams kind of have a hangover. So we'll see what happens. I'm not convinced the Steelers are going to be that good. So, but I'm looking at Baltimore. I might take Baltimore. If you look at their schedule, a healthy Lamar Jackson, and I think people are overlooking all the injuries they had last year, especially J.K. Dobbins is back. I think the offense without Marquise Brown's going to be fine on the outside. Rashard Bateman, I expect to have a big year. You still have Mark Andrews. Gus Edwards is back. Like they had a ton of injuries in the backfield. Lamar Jackson was hurt, and then. And we'll see what they do on defense, but they're getting some pieces back on defense too. Their entire secondary was decimated. They didn't have Marcus Peters. I'm going to Vegas at the end of this month, and first thing I'm going to do is see what the Ravens are to win that division. I might be putting some money on the Ravens to win that division.
Yeah, it does. I can definitely see that. I mean, because the Bengals do have a tougher road schedule. The schedule is kind of tough, but yeah, I don't see the Steeler thing is like, I know Tomlin is great, never had a losing season, all those things like that. But I'm not loving Kenny Pickett as far as that goes. And I mean, and then Trubisky, I don't see it. But we'll see. Maybe
if the Steelers make the playoffs this year with Trubisky or Pickett, just put Tomlin in the Hall of Fame right now. We don't need to wait 5 years after he retires. He goes in immediately. Enshrine him.
If they win a playoff game too, give him his old section in the Hall of Fame as far as that goes. All right, Ryan, you have a great day, man. Take care.
All right, take care.
Ray Nation, see you next time.